49 CFR 371.3C states, each party to a broker transaction has the right to review the record of the transaction required to be kept by these rules. So can a broker add a dispatch clause that states the carrier waived their right to transparency of the transaction? Join Tyler Biddle, transportation attorney and consultant, as we explore the facts in the legal complaint filed by Pink Cheetah Express versus TQL. Please say hello in the live chat, share your thoughts, grow your network, and learn from the best on ATI Auto Business. What's up, ecosystem? Welcome back to Industry Logistics on ATI Auto Business, where everyone learns more about the automotive industry. Now, Sue isn't feeling well today, so please do help me wish a warm welcome to my co-host and feature guest today, Tyler Biddle. Tyler, can you see me and hear me okay?
I can, Jay.
All right, it's great to have you. Thank you for taking the time. We're going to jump into the lawsuit. Can I call it a lawsuit?
Yeah, I mean, so we're discussing the lawsuit, and kind of in conjunction with that, the FMCSA's proposed rulemaking and what is called broker transparency rules. But they really go hand in hand.
All right, cool. So, because I think that, as I'm putting things together, okay, legal complaint and lawsuit, are they the same thing?
Yeah. To start a lawsuit, you file a complaint in the court.
All right, there we go. All right, cool. So we're going to explore it today. This is the Pink Cheetah versus TQL show. I don't know if anyone's done this show yet. I like to do lawsuits on this channel. It's a great way to learn, and it stirs things up a little bit, which seems like there's this concern about stirring the pot. People do it, at the water cooler, but gets a little dicey otherwise. Tyler, you are a transportation attorney and consultant. Waiver. This is a conversation, not a legal advice show. Correct?
Correct. I'm an attorney. I am not your attorney or anyone who's listening. Quite possibly.
Okay, perfect. All right, and it is the Pink Cheetah Express versus TQL complaint. What do you call this? The caption?
Yeah. Yep.
Right. So when you see this, and we see it a lot today, there's a lot of lawsuits. This is the caption. Well, this pesky code, Title 49, Subtitle B, Chapter 3, Subchapter B, Part 371, Subpart A, 371.3 records to be kept by brokers. Dang it! Each party to a broker transaction has the right to review the record of the transaction required to be kept by these rules. So is that a law?
That's a law. Yeah, that's a law. And
okay.
As you can see, if you see right below the red portion that you've boxed there, this came from a regulation that was passed by the Interstate Commerce Commission back in 1980. Now, this was before deregulation of trucking. And some of this background is actually kind of important because if you look at this rulemaking from 1980, the part of the purpose of this was to help avoid, and this was a big concern with the Interstate Commerce Commission, one of the first federal administrative agencies, was rebates. They wanted to prevent rebating. And rebating, if anybody knows anything about transportation law, was a huge concern related to rail lines, which was originally why the ICC was created. So a lot of the rules and laws associated with rail were kind of ported over to trucking, over the road transportation, and this rule was promulgated to ensure that rebating wasn't happening and occurring. And certainly at this time, and when the rule was passed in 1980, freight brokers didn't really have the same position and influence in the transportation industry that they have now. But that's all to say is this is a rule on the books right now. This broker transparency, we can talk about the proposed rulemaking from the FMCSA, but this is a law on the books right now. Yes, Jay.
Oh, no, I I'm following. So I guess a follow up then would be: is that why? Is it viewed as like a rule from the past? We don't need that anymore.
That's a great question. So
I mean, it's speculation, but
back a few years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, the Transportation Intermediaries Association. This is a very large organization that
TIA,
TIA,
yes,
yes, TIA.
yes,
They
yes.
represent all the transportation intermediaries.
They seem kind of broker
Oh yeah,
heavy.
they represent
Okay,
the freight brokers, freight forwarders. Yeah, the
right.
NVOCCs on the ocean side. Yeah, huge organization, a lot of members, and they actually had petitioned the FMCSA in 2020 to remove this rule. Right.
Uh,
So there's been
that
a little
sounds
bit
right to me. Yeah,
there's been a little bit of
the
backstory.
math
They're saying,
checks
hey,
out.
look, this doesn't really apply in today's world. This, and there's been a lot of legal developments, in terms of sharing of trade secret information and the types of things that could potentially be shared if a carrier was able to get some of these records. So there is some backstory towards, hey, is it still relevant? But so far that proposal from TIA was rejected, and here we are. We still have the rule on the books, and it's still an issue.
So, all right, well, then here's an analogy and a question. Do wholesalers, like, you've got manufacturer to wholesaler to maybe distributor to retailer, do wholesaler and distributor get to see the manufacturer's numbers?
Well, so that's beyond what this regulation allows for, right? Because if we're talking about wholesalers, distributors, manufacturers, none of them are brokers here, right? To fall under this regulation, we're talking about a third party freight brokerage company that's coordinating the shipment of goods for compensation, right? So who can get these records? Well, the broker uses a motor carrier because the broker doesn't have any assets with which to move anything. They just coordinate the shipment. So we've got a federally regulated broker, and then we have a motor carrier, and then whoever hires the broker, and that could be the manufacturer to a to their wholesaler. Whoever hires that broker could also request these records. And
You
really,
know,
these records have to do with the transport of the goods, right?
well, you made me think of something too, and that is that most people I talk to are not they don't drive equipment. They don't own equipment.
Hmm.
And they know they do. That's because they all kind of know that's where you lose money in trucking. If you
Well,
want to
yeah,
lose money in trucking, own equipment and drive it.
yeah. I mean, look, the margins for asset-based motor carriers are pretty thin, and always have been. There's a lot of costs, and costs have been increasing for those motor carriers. Cost of fuel. Hopefully, they can charge customers for fuel surcharge. Insurance rates have just been they continue to go up. In light of kind of the state of highway accident litigation and other things. So yeah, running assets, running trucks, that's a complicated business, and I mean, there's plenty of people out there that make it work. There's plenty of trucking companies that do
I'm
quite
not
well, but
exactly sure how they do. It seems like you kick the can for decades, and then the chickens come home to roost. Yellow, Jack Cooper. I'm just saying. I'm just talking real. Like, I'm not holding back. Why? It seems like if you want to lose money in trucking, you own and drive equipment.
I don't know.
And a
There's
lot of guys feel that way. I mean, I'm not making that up. I've had guys say it to me,
Yeah,
in
look,
frustration. All I'm doing is losing money.
yeah, it's a tough industry, and it's been really tough, since post COVID, the post COVID boom. I mean, we've been in a freight recession for what 2.5+ years now, and for the smaller, especially the smaller trucking companies relying on the spot rate, which these are the smaller trucking companies that are really concerned with this broker transparency rules because most of their customers are freight brokers, right? So they're relying on the spot market, and the spot market has been in the dumps. It was boom. It was definitely boom during COVID, but now it's been pretty bust for quite some time, and And you're right. I think there are a lot of people struggling. The larger carriers that have, direct contracts with the shippers, manufacturers, retailers,
There you go.
they're going to do better,
Yeah.
right? They've
Yeah.
got they've got contracts
That's
that they've
actually
got
what you need to
dedicated
succeed.
lanes. Yeah.
And in this situation, I don't think you said broker.
Well, that's it, right? Is in these smaller carriers, their customers are brokers, and if they're relying on the spot market, they're struggling. But they're struggling right now, and they're kind of pissed at these brokers, saying, "Well, how much are you making on the shipment?" Yet, while they all kind of race to the bottom and accept these, whatever low rates to move the stuff, and it's like, don't move stuff for a loss. Don't do that. But I get the sense that happens more often than it should. So that really kind of leads us to, hey, what is
Right.
and that's really the basis for the proposed broker transparency rules. That's the basis for the Pink Cheetah versus TQL lawsuit, for these small carriers who feel like they're getting screwed.
So I think there's a couple things here. Is that saying these things, I think, lays the foundation of why it's so important to some carriers that they be able to see these records. Like, I need to see it because I need to know. Am I getting a fair deal, right?
And that's what their argument. I mean, there are, if you want to go on the Federal Register's website and take a look at the FMCSA's proposed rulemaking. I think I checked this morning just because there have been so many. Hold up, I got over 6,200 comments on this proposed rule. I think
we need AI to ask, how many carriers, what's the summation, right? That only AI can go through 62,000 comments. 6,200?
6,200, yeah,
Okay.
6,200.
Right.
And I mean, there's a lot of interest in this, and the people have a lot of strong feelings. And yeah, the small carriers are saying, well, we have a right to these records. Okay, arguably yes. We just, we want to see exactly what the brokers are making. And to be fair, I don't think that changes the market, right? Especially the spot market. It doesn't change the market.
It begs the question: what are you going to do with that information?
And
what does it matter?
And I think a lot of these small carriers, I think they know that they're accepting rates that it's like, hey, look, if you don't have to accept that rate. If you don't think that's a good rate, you don't have to accept it. I understand, they need to keep the wheels turning, trying to generate revenue, but that they're, the freight broker, they're there, and it's not unfair to say that they've got a very large investment. They're the ones that are investing in the technology, and they've got the customer relationships that they're investing in, and does take money. So yeah, they're going to expect some margin out of the shipment too. I think the carriers are just saying, hey, we want to know how bad we're getting screwed, I guess. But again, what do you do with that information?
Right. All right. Maybe so. We did a lot of we front loaded this topic, which is great. I talk about getting to know the full ecosystem. We're the neutral zone. This is last week's show, Tone Deaf Automotive Marketing. As I was telling Sue, here's the thing. By tuning in, by being here, you're in this super niche segment. I think most of the people that would appreciate this message are so busy trying to load, unload, get a load that they don't have time to just watch television. And then the other segment, which this seems to attack, certainly doesn't want any likes or views on it. So it's strange to pump out content that I'm not sure if there's much audience for yet. But I still do this podcast because I think somewhere within space and time it's relevant. I talk about a video marketing process. I did that Tuesday night in the dealership. This is my Thursday show. Oh, here we go. I saw Rob Carpenter mentioned. Rob loves to kind of point out this kind of crazy stuff. I think this was in one of Rob's posts. And what's weird is this isn't even the guy that I was thinking of. There was a guy on a trucker on an iPad, and he slams into an SUV, which I think is what this guy did, and it's not even the same guy. That means how many truckers are on dating apps right now while driving? I don't know. I don't think it's just one or two.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've got a, I want to call it an epidemic of highway accidents in the U.S. And the FMCSA is tasked with a pretty big order of keeping our roadways safe and regulating interstate transportation. Um, I mean, Rob's been in the industry for a long time, and yeah, he posts some really good stuff. But I think it's educational towards, hey, what is a driver doing right and wrong? And drivers have a tough job. It is tough to be out on the roadway with, the general motoring public and everybody looking at their phones or
Oh,
tablets. I think that's a huge problem. I mean, it's
okay.
it's
So I
crazy.
got pause. So I got 2 points. One is FMCSA is a safety organization, right? So what are they doing weighing in on broker records? And number two, if trucking is that terrible and we'd really rather be doing other things, wouldn't we want autonomous trucking?
Yeah, I mean, the question about FMCSA's legal right to regulate, for example, here, just the broker transparency. I mean, that's a question, right? That is going to be a question if the proposed rules are passed, and could end up in court, and the court will decide whether or not the FMCSA, pursuant to whatever underlying statute, actually has the authority to pass the regulations at this point. Um, that's a good question. The safety piece of it is, hey, I think that should be the focus more than anything. FMCSA, we do have, people die every day on the roads, and I think that is a little bit more important to focus on than what private parties, may put in their contracts and what the rate market looks like.
Did you see that some scientists are studying ants and the way that they travel and don't clog up and trying to apply that type of methodology to autonomous vehicles?
I
Like,
haven't seen that. I mean,
whoa, that's kind of brilliant.
there's some companies out there that are um, doing a lot. Kodiak being one of them in the autonomous trucking space, and even in passenger car spaces. I mean, I really do think that the technology, once it's there, has the ability to make the roadways safer than us knuckleheads, looking at our phones and finding the right song from our playlist or
So
whatever it is.
I think we all have times where we need to take a call, we need to do something. It'd be great if the car would just drive itself at that time. And I think here's one of the things. When I talk about this stuff again, I'm not worried about it. Yeah, obviously I don't drive a truck, but I think that you still need somebody with the truck for quite a while. There may come a day where you don't need anybody anywhere, and we all live in the Wally and we're just on vacation the whole time, and the whole world is trash. That could be coming. But until then, it seems like autonomous features would benefit all of us in our busy calendars and the things we'd rather be doing.
I mean, I'm with you. I mean, there's I mean, we've been seeing it, even the AI disruption in terms of workflow and what people do. And, I think the transportation industry as large and um, complicated as it is, has always been, pretty ripe for, disruption
In,
with new technology.
in fact, that's where you made me think of this. Is that I believe, let's say this: if you have an autonomous truck, then as the driver, you can now be the dispatcher and the broker. You can be all three. You could be driver, dispatcher, broker in your autonomous truck. Can't you?
I'd have to look at the laws on that. See, but that's kind of where things get really interesting, from a legal standpoint, being an attorney, and I've looked into these issues, for companies in the past, is, we have sets of laws that have requirements. A vehicle must, you got to have a driver, you got to have side view mirrors, right? Different things that you wouldn't necessarily need from either, vehicle safety or driver safety standpoint, that doesn't really apply to the autonomous vehicle. It's, putting a square peg in a round hole sometimes from a legal regulatory standpoint. And that's why, certain states and jurisdictions have kind of passed laws to have pilot programs and allow for some of the development of these technologies, because they don't quite fit into the statutory or regulatory scheme that may exist.
Yeah, well, we're about to enter that realm with all industry, I believe. If we haven't already, dipped a toe. Let's see what else I got here. Oh, I got memos. Yeah, I do this. Hey, did you get the memo? I always do this on Thursdays. Yep, there we go. Trucking jobs down as economy companies face economic uncertainty. And what's the long and the short of it? Compared to last February, truck driver jobs are down more than 15,000. Is anybody surprised?
I mean, I'm not right now. I mean, just the way that, we had a lot of capacity, during the COVID boom times, and now there's less capacity needed. So there's less need for certain driving jobs. We've had some, companies go out of business, and I think that's, maybe been some of the cause of that
But talk
reduction.
about that for a second. Do me a favor. Talk about capacity. We hear this. Anybody who tunes into freight waves, hears capacity, capacity, capacity.
Hmm.
But I think that term, I don't know, eludes some truckers. What is capacity? Why does it matter? Why is it down? And here's bonus question: how do you manage it with all this tariff nonsense? I mean, uncertainty. I'm sorry, uncertainty.
Nonsense, uncertainty. I'm not really sure what to make of it. Well, from a high level capacity is, hey, if we have people that need goods moved, and during the pandemic, there were a lot of people that, couldn't keep shelves stocked, couldn't keep warehouses full. Manufacturers, retailers couldn't get things moved fast enough, and all the available capacity was full, and that's why those rates were up, right? And a lot of people got into the market during that time because, hey, this was a great business to be in, either as a freight broker or actually running trucks transporting goods. Now when there is less demand for that capacity, right, and you still have that same level, as just as many trucks, just as many drivers, well, that's going to compress the rates are going to go down, and that's where we've been. And now we're kind of to the point where it's like, well, you know if the demand for capacity, the demand for trucks, for goods to be moved goes down further, eventually, rates can only go so low, and companies can no longer be profitable, right? And then you start to reduce capacity. And once the capacity, the trucks running, gets to a certain point, it'll kind of get to where the demand is at, and then eventually, hopefully, rates go up. But no, there's a lot of smarter transportation economists. You can find them on LinkedIn that can explain this in better detail than I can. But that's kind of a high level.
You did very well, though, and that's the thing is that I think the economists will tell you is that being an economist, what I wonder for economists is, does it get boring? Isn't it a lot of speculation? Isn't it a lot of rubber band? We go there, we come back, we go there, we come back. Yeah, it's kind of like doing the weather. Do you think the weatherman ever goes, my God, it's a cloud, it's a sun, I don't know.
Depends on what time of year and where you're at.
Right?
We're in the Midwest, or I'm in the Midwest. That I think it's kind of a crapshoot. No, I mean, I think, but I don't think anybody was expecting, the Trump administration to, put out some of the tariffs that they're proposing, and how that's going to affect the flow of freight, right? I mean, you could have asked anybody last year, and they wouldn't have been able to guess this, right? And I think that's the difficult part about guessing the future.
Well, and how impossible is it now to be like a customs agent, right? Like, how do you even perform that job now, where you have to look? Don't you have to check the freight? You have to check the manifest. You have to check, and then maybe they have you on the tariff. We'll pass that one. Pass.
I mean, as long as somebody's paying for the tariff, right? I think that's the
Mm,
key concern from
okay, yeah. Well, welcome back to Speculationville. I saw this headline: "You're on your own. Cargo theft, fraud challenges aired in Congress." Is that an irresponsible headline?
um, it's kind of where it's at. I mean, and I've been to a number of um, meetings where the FBI has a pretty limited cargo, freight theft and fraud task force, and I mean very small. And it's a big problem in the industry, and I think the way that the government looks at it is, hey, I don't want to call it a victimless crime, but nobody's actually getting hurt. It's more of an economic crime, and unfortunately, I don't think we can rely on the government to fix the problem. I think we can try and rely on the industry to do that. And I think the technology, um, will go a long ways towards doing that. But the cargo theft and freight fraud, I mean, it's very bad right now, no
It's
question.
isn't it? Let's get my camera on. Isn't it a great time to be a fraudster? I mean, that's tempting, right?
Not for me.
No, but I mean, I listen. I just mean as a career, this is the perfect time to get into cargo theft fraud.
Yeah, I
Because,
mean,
right?
it's.
I mean, I'm just being real.
I think over the past few years, I mean, the prevalence has gone up because they've kind of figured out how to do it. I think with the technology, I mean, I've seen instances where the people's emails have been hacked. I mean, things like that where it's like, hey, it's not just some guy, hey, we bought an MC number, and we tricked you, or had somebody show up and just take the freight. Really, these are sophisticated criminals.
This is now
They're not dumb.
organized crime.
Yeah, these are not stupid people.
No,
No, not at all.
no, yeah, and I think that's part of the misnomer is now that it's like some hacker kid. No,
No, no, these
no,
are
they have a
sophisticated.
conference room table now.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah,
No, they're sophisticated, and
yeah.
that's where it's we start to figure out ways to use the technology and figure out ways to kind of root that out, and they're going to figure out ways to get around it. And that's kind of the cat and mouse game, I think.
Somebody's like, guys, are you going to do the lawsuit or what? We're almost there. I always throw this out there. I know it's really not right, and especially if you really like pro wrestling, and I throw this out there, it's an immediate it's negative reaction. But it is the Wild West. I couldn't figure out any way to express the lucha libre ness of auto transport, really trucking in general. You can do whatever you want. I say it. And other people feel it. If there was an award for not fighting freight fraud,
I saw that one.
that's pretty crazy. It's a good one. Good use of AI. Also, here's another. I wasn't sure about this headline. I didn't dive deep in the story. Highway denies selling, storing, or otherwise snooping on ELD data. I don't know. I'm just going to keep moving. Oh, there it is again. Trucker takes broker transparency to the courtroom. All right, here we go. 30 minutes after. Pink Cheetah versus TQL. 50. Is this thing 55 pages?
The complaint itself is what, 12, 15, something like
Okay.
that. So I
Oh,
mean, you
okay.
have
Okay.
the actual, allegations in the complaint,
Okay.
and then the rest of that are the exhibits to the complaint. There's certain communications, letters, those types of things that are attached to it. They're part of
Okay.
it.
So, and it's always interesting. You go through, right? We'll just do a little intro here. We got the complaint for. Okay, so we want injunctive relief. So you start with what you want, and then
Yeah.
you talk about the venue, then you talk about the parties, and then you get into the allegations. Do you want to
Mhm.
summarize the allegations? Are you able to do that for us?
Well, what I think I'd like to do
Yeah,
is
take it away.
give some of the backstory, and some of the backstory is in those factual allegations, um, kind of summed up, but it gets to essentially what Pink Cheetah is asking for, and Pink Cheetah is asking for two things. Pink Cheetah is asking for additional records related to 14 shipments that uh, Pink Cheetah hauled for TQL. And then second, Pink Cheetah is asking for the court to enforce the FMCSA's order. I put order in quotes because I'm not sure if it's in order. That'll be argued. Um, the FMCSA's order to say, hey, TQL, you must remove your waiver provision, and this is the waiver related to 49 CFR 371.3. You need to remove that from all of your agreements because it's not consistent with federal law. So those are the two things that Pink Cheetah is asking for. So the backstory, and it's I mean it's interesting for sure. So this all kind of originated back January 2023. TQL tendered a shipment of ice cream to Pink Cheetah. Pink Cheetah took it. There's some issues with detention and pay, and then after that, Pink Cheetah requests from TQL say, hey, I want to see the records related to this shipment. So TQL says, no. We read our agreement. Our agreement says you waive that. Okay. Well, Pink Cheetah's owner, I think a gal named by Dakota Springfields, I believe is her name. She has a Juris Doctorate. She's not a lawyer, but she has her JD. She went to law school, so she's clearly knows what's going on. Anyways, she says, no, you can't waive that. So she filed a complaint with the FMCSA saying, hey, here's what happened. I requested the records related to this shipment, and TQL's told me no. The FMCSA contacts TQL and says, hey, look, we got this complaint. You need to provide Pink Cheetah these records related to this shipment. TQL first says, no, we have a waiver. The FMCSA apparently threatened to show up in Cincinnati and show up at TQL's offices and get the records themselves. So then TQL complied, provided the records, and the payment records showed that TQL made 44% margin on the shipment. So pretty good margin for TQL on the shipment. So that's kind of the backstory. Now, again, Pink Cheetah wants, hey, we want injunctive relief. We want you to remove that waiver provision from your agreement, and we also want those additional records for other shipments that Pink Cheetah hauled for TQL. So that's kind of the background.
You know what kind of got my attention first is that there it is. Somebody at Pink Cheetah had more education than the average person. And it seems like that's what it takes sometimes for something to happen. That's the flashpoint.
Yeah, and I agree. I think that level of sophistication was there. And I also think that the timing of this was kind of worked in her favor because they were looking at, and this was OIDA, the owner-operators association, and then the Small Business and Transportation Coalition had proposed right around that time to the FMCSA saying, hey, we want stronger broker transparency rules. So these things kind of happened, right around the same time. And I don't think that is a coincidence either.
Right. Well, and so then you also, you have, I'm going to guess you have OIDA on one side and TIA on the other. Is that fair?
They represent competing interests much of the time. Yes.
Right. A better way of putting it. But so you got the flashpoint of the education and the incident, plus these organizations that have a vested interest, plus the question, right, FMCSA, how long, my gosh, you know what, on the Truck Safe webinar yesterday, somebody was talking about how taxed the FMCSA is on trying to get things done.
Yeah.
And, it seems like anytime there's a problem, auto transport, trucking, freight, hey, FMCSA, we need clarification. They must be their hair on fire over there. I mean, is it crazy over at the FMCSA?
I mean, I would imagine. I don't even know how many administrators they've had in the past, 5 or 6 years. I don't know if they've had 8 or more different administrators of the agency. And I mean, that's the top position in the agency. I'd have to go back and check, but they've had a lot of turnover at the top spot. And, that's kind of, I get it. I understand, wanting to cut down a bloated federal government and reduce our deficit. But I really do think the FMCSA, towards trying to keep the motoring public safe and regulating interstate transportation, really has a critical job, and yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be tougher to do that job with less people, in DC, to do that effectively. And obviously for enforcement, they rely on, state highway patrol officers as FMCSA agents, but it's still a lot to regulate.
Well, and that's where I was going to say Doge chainsaw, right? Again, I'm not,
dynamite chainsaw, yeah.
Okay, but anyways, and again, I'm still hung up on the fact that FMCSA is a safety organization. Is the enforcement of access to records a safety issue?
I think that's, I mean, is it? I don't see how it is. And that was one of the questions that they proposed, when the whole rulemaking process, the agency proposes questions. Hey, these are the rules that we want to kind of promulgate, we have some questions. We want the public's input on, and that's one of them. Hey, does this have really anything to do with safety? There's, I mean, thousands of comments. You can read them, where people have opinions, but I don't really see. I mean, this is really an economic issue. I don't
Right.
see how this.
It's an economic. Is there
Yeah.
an economic enforcement authority in trucking?
Um,
Well,
ar
FTC? I don't know.
Arguably the FMCSA, arguably the Surface Transportation Board. The one argument that I did see was that, and again, I mean, it's something that somebody commented was, hey, the way that, again, smaller carriers feel like they're getting screwed, it's causing a reduction in experienced truck drivers, and that reduction in that experience level of the workforce. I mean, good long-term drivers that just feel like, hey, I'm done with the industry. That impacts safety. Okay, that's an argument, and I do believe that those truck drivers that have drove hundreds of thousands of miles, those are good drivers out there, and they do help keep the road safe. But that's just the one comment I remember seeing as an argument
But
as how it affects it.
it is a reasonable. I saw a guy. He was turning in an intersection, big load of lumber, doing a hell of a great job. Older guy, gray beard, and I thought, see, that's what we're gonna miss
Yeah.
if we keep down this road. That this guy's not gonna do it any longer, and we need this guy.
Look, it's an argument. I don't think the broker transparency rules are going to be what forces people out of the industry. I think that's more
I
than,
agree exactly. It's
but
not gonna
again,
be.
it's a
Yeah,
comment. It
but
was a thought somebody had. I don't say it's invalid or anything like that, but it's a thought.
so on the waiver, all right. Did TQL create this waiver? Is this type of waiver common? Let's talk waiver.
Yeah, any well-drafted broker carrier agreement, right? And every broker that is worth anything has a broker carrier agreement with each carrier that they engage to transport freight for their customers. Um, every well-drafted agreement should, in my opinion, and I draft these agreements, right? And they should have this waiver, and it pretty much just say, hey, carrier waives their rights to brokers' records pursuant to 371.3, something along those lines. And it's in TQL's agreement, and it's in just about every broker carrier agreement.
Well, now that's interesting. Are there many other lines of code that probably go unnoticed but could result in? I mean, this is a loaded question, but yeah, I mean, when you go to the valet and you leave your car, they give you a little thing.
Yeah.
Who reads the whole thing? Pretty much nobody.
Nobody.
Yeah.
And this can get into a lot of legal specifics, but from a high level, I think something anybody should know. I mean, forget talking about transportation. Just because it's in an agreement doesn't mean it is enforceable. Okay? Just because somebody put it in a contract and you signed it doesn't mean that they could go and enforce that. Okay? You can put a lot of things in a contract and a court can say, well, that's not valid. Thanks anyways. And this is going to be one of them, right? So, hey, this is in every agreement. Hey, Pink Cheetah signed the agreement that said, yeah, I waive my rights. The FMCSA still told TQL, hey, look, that's not valid. And that's the agency doing it. Now, hopefully, maybe we'll get a court to weigh in on that.
So what you said there is pretty important, and so this is crazy. Actually, I got a book once, Parts of a Contract. If you want a bedtime story, read about the parts of a contract. The irony is, this stuff, understanding the parts of a contract, what you just said there, just because you put it in there doesn't mean it's enforceable.
Mm-hmm.
And that really strikes a chord with logic of almost anything. You could tell me to do something, but it doesn't mean I have to do it.
That's right.
It might just be a suggestion.
Yeah. Or it's
Clean up your room. Thanks for the suggestion.
Yeah. Or I mean, reasonably, the parties can agree on something, and then a court says, "That's great that you agreed on that. You can't agree on that." You know what I mean? And that really is kind of boiled down what this waiver is. Again, if a court gets to the substantive merits of this waiver.
Wow. So I think at that point, okay, we kind of summed up. Are there other parts of this legal complaint and lawsuit that require addressing at this time?
No, I mean there's other small things here, in terms of whether or not Pink Cheetah actually has standing. And when we say from a legal standpoint, do they actually have a right to file the lawsuit, kind of on behalf of the FMCSA, right? Because part of what they're trying to do, remember that one of the two things that they were trying to do is say, hey, we want to enforce the FMCSA's order to TQL to take this provision out of all their agreements. I think there's going to be a question whether or not there was an actual order from the FMCSA, because that order was really just an email from some transportation specialist at the FMCSA that TQL do that. So I think there's going to be some arguments whether or not, again, Pink Cheetah even has standing. So a court, or this court at least, the District Court of District Columbia, may not actually get to the merits of whether or not that waiver is enforceable. It's kind of dealing with some of the preliminary issues first. So again, just because the lawsuit was filed, just because it's kind of the key striking primary question, doesn't mean the court's actually going to get to it, because there are some other issues. But I'd say beyond that, that's a pretty good high level overview of what's going on.
So if a broker happens to stumble over this recording, the takeaway could be, don't sweat it if you've got that in your dispatch. You're right.
I mean, I think right now every broker should be monitoring this, because this, not just this lawsuit, but also the proposed rules that the FMCSA is promulgating. Because, hey, look, if your waiver is unenforceable and a carrier requests these records, well, you got to produce them. Okay, you got to produce them. And if the FMCSA passes these additional broker transparency rules, you've got to follow those rules. And there could be consequences if you don't. So, yeah, I mean, you can sit back a little bit, but if you're a broker, this is something worth monitoring.
Do you think there's other parts of the dispatch contract? I'm calling the dispatch a contract. Is that fair?
I mean, it's
because that is the contract, right? The dispatch.
Yeah, well, it's not necessarily called a dispatch. It's their broker carrier agreement.
Agreement.
And usually this is anytime a freight broker is going to onboard a carrier. Part of that onboarding process is that the carrier executes the broker carrier agreement, right? And there might be individual rate confirmation agreements with respect to a specific shipment. Hey, we agree on this rate for this shipment. Okay, great. And it's going to reference that broker carrier agreement, but that agreement is really the document.
So the broker carrier agreement is the master contract?
Yes.
And each load, rate, con, dispatch may or may not contain the language that the broker carrier agreement contains. Please refer back to the broker carrier agreement regarding all regulations, blah, blah.
Yeah, that's typically how it'll generally work.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. That's pretty interesting too. Do you have a copy? Do you kind of look, is that part of your craft, is to get copies of documents and look at them, and is that
all the time?
Right.
I love it. Yeah.
That's what you do for fun.
Yeah. I mean, I negotiate these types of agreements all the time. I have my own forms that I provide to clients and customize them towards their operational preferences. But yeah, there's always something, you look at a different agreement, and sometimes there's a nice little tidbit in there. You're like, oh, there we go. Kind of grab and go and integrate into your own. So yeah, I always look at these agreements all the time and try and think about them.
Do you have a general inbox if somebody wants to contact you, whether for business or speculation, opinion? I don't know.
Yeah, you can find me at Biddle at childresslawpllc.com. You can find me on LinkedIn and shoot me a message as well. But yeah.
Tyler Biddle on LinkedIn. Okay, I just put it in the live chat. Perfect. Biddle at childresslaw.com. Tyler, thank you so much for doing this. I kept you for 45 minutes. It was really informative. Not a lot of views. Not worried about that. This is tough stuff. More people tend to watch on demand than they watch live. And then some people just go ahead and get the podcast. That way you can like mow the lawn, do the dishes, and still get the information. So I'm a big fan of that, anyways.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I get
So
it. People are doing things
oh,
like
I know.
work in
You're
the
right.
middle of the day.
It right, exactly. In fact, Eddie says, "What's the benefit of the carrier attaining broker records? Question mark. If not to somehow blacklist the broker, I mean, what are you going to do with the records?"
I think
And
that's
when you said TQL got 44% of the margin of the load in question, is that right?
yeah.
It's a pretty high percentage, isn't it?
I mean,
That's a
my
pretty good margin
understanding.
for just
Yeah,
brokering ice cream.
yeah. I mean, again, they have a lot of investment and cost as well. Um, but average
I
rate.
know. It's
My understanding is average margins are 10 to 15-ish
right.
percent.
And
So
who's to say what's fair, what you're supposed to do? Yeah, I definitely some brokers. I've had friends that are brokers. I think I have less friends that are brokers now. I'm not trying to pick on any business, but I do say, come on, if you're taking 44%, come on, man. I mean, that's pretty high.
what's the saying? Pigs get fat, hogs get slaughtered. I don't know.
There you go. There you go. That sums it up for trucking.
Yeah.
Oh man, and Eddie, yeah, right. Eddie wants to know the rate. He wants to know. The
Yeah.
question is, let's say you do know. What are you going to do with it?
I think that's yeah. What are you going to do with
What
it?
are you going to do with it? But I do think it's interesting that, well, it's like when you play poker, you can't see each other's cards.
Yeah.
What if you could?
It wouldn't be much of a game, I guess, at that point. I mean,
Well,
look,
maybe that's the problem. It is a game. Maybe it's too much of a game.
I don't know. It's a very competitive market. And that's the one thing, to
Yeah,
be
well,
said about it is,
that's why I wouldn't set up a brokerage. I mean, right? Why
that,
would you set up a brokerage today? I have no idea why.
well, I mean, eventually the freight market will rebound and it's a pretty good business. It really is. There's a lot of people that have done really well in that
You
industry.
just made an argument for. Well, but you're just. There are thousands of brokers. In fact, if you add freight, there's thousands of auto transport brokers. That means in freight there must be 10 to 20,000. There
I
could be
mean, there's
30,000.
there's a lot of them. I think that goes with what the market's demanding, and the reality is transportation is very fragmented. There are hundreds of thousands of motor carriers, most of them under 20 trucks, and in order to meet capacity demands, shippers engage these brokers. Hey, why would I
Yeah, but that's
why would I use 40 different
okay.
trucking
But
vendors when I can sign up with one broker, right?
I understand that. But that's the old, like, I think of it like travel agents. There are not 30,000 travel agents anymore. There may have been in the 60s,
Yeah.
but we are entering another phase of human technology and etc. We are not going to need 30,000 brokers. There's no way
I
this
I
continues.
I think you're probably right. But we'll see. I mean, again, I think it's
Right, we'll see. Right.
technology, market demands, and the unexpected events, right?
That's why be a trucker broker. You just have to make it legal.
Right?
Trucker
And
broker.
trucker broker,
Trucker broker.
autonomous trucker broker.
Autonomous trucker broker. It makes sense to me. That was awesome, Tyler. Thank you so much, man.
Yeah.
You have a
Thanks for
great
having me
day.
on.
Keep in touch, okay?
Yeah, will do. Thanks for having me on,
All
Jeff.
right, see you, buddy.
Yeah,
Thanks.
bye.
Bye. All right, cool. That was fun. Jay makes legal fun. Well, it's not legal. It's just speculation and reference and information. Parts of a contract, waivers, enforceability, standing. Here's what I really do, I think. And thanks for tuning in, guys. 925 Eddie. Anybody who watches on demand, and if you get the podcast, is that what did we do? We just did 50 minutes. That's a lot of legal stuff in a 50-minute period of time, but I think it helps give an understanding and perspective of the legal language. It's one of the reasons I jump into lawsuits, not for the gossip, but for the understanding. Because there's so much, it's really hard to understand all the instruments involved in legal wrangling. So hopefully this show helped a little bit. If you want to learn more, you can send me an email, autotransportintel@gmail.com. You can also look up Tyler, again, Biddle at childresslaw.com. And Sue wasn't feeling well today. That's why she wasn't here today. We're actually going to take the next 2 weeks off. There's some changes here at ATI, so why not? Tuesday night, I've got, oh my gosh, Tuesday night's going to be a cool show. Aaron Clark, 20 years experience in finished vehicle logistics, now open to work in 3PL. I've seen a lot more open to work on LinkedIn in the past year, and I think there's going to be more. And we're kind of touching upon that too. And there's just, I think we've reached an apogee, a height in this roller coaster. And I really do believe in autonomous trucker broker as a future career, and all these other amalgams of using AI and skill, and I don't know. So anyways, that's what we're talking about Tuesday night. If that interests you, please do join us. Thanks for watching ATI. Here comes the splash. Take care, and we'll see you in April. Thanks, everybody. Bye.